Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining us on episode 4. We are the Voice of Reason podcast. My name is Sean Phillips, and I am joined here live tonight with my good friends Andy Van Beber and Travis Kirkendall. Gentlemen, how are you today?
What's
Good,
going on,
man.
guys? I'm hoping that it works on our. There we go. Yeah, we're
Yeah, we're
seriously
up.
delayed. We're seriously delayed on our Facebook feed, but that's okay. There's about a five
Yeah.
second delay going on there, but that's okay.
That's okay. There's always a 5 second delay when it comes to everything in my life, but at the end of the
Not.
day, everything only
Nope.
goes for about
Nope. Nope. Nope.
five
Come
seconds.
on.
So
We're live now. Come on.
we got to start early. Thank God my
Mm-hmm.
grandparents are dead and they will never get to watch this
Oh, yep. Yep.
lovely podcast.
Yep.
So, well, gentlemen, we are now at week 4. That means we are a month into the podcast. So,
Praise the Lord and pass the
super
biscuits,
excited.
boys.
Exactly. I am, first off, I am so grateful for everyone that has continued to tune in to the Voice of Reason podcast. It has been so much fun already. We've had a great guest so far. Hank Owens was so much fun in to have last week. And I can't wait for the future guests that we're going to be bringing to you guys each and every week moving forward here. So we are slowly growing. If you guys are tuning in live with us here, Monday night is when we're recording this. We are live on Facebook for the first time. Bear with
Yeah.
us for the bumps and the bruises. Like I
And
said, you'll
feel
see
free
my
to
lip droop.
feel free to comment at any time on there. Feel free to comment. We got 7 live viewers right now, and that's awesome. Share it with all your friends, please. Like I said, the video might not be the best quality, but you're getting to be with us live, and you see how great the celebrities look.
And yes, anytime you guys want to chime in, please comment, put anything down below. We will see that pop up, and then we can actually engage with you guys live right here on the show. And for those of you that are listening in while you're having your cup of coffee, on your way to work, whatever it might be, on Tuesday, Wednesday, throughout the week, definitely please join us from now on Monday nights. Come join us live, and you guys can actually get in on the conversation. So we've got a pretty great week. But before we jump into everything, gentlemen, how was your guys' last 7 days since we last spoke?
Great.
Can't
Fantastic.
complain. Just
I hate
waiting on
time
that
change.
check.
Yeah. We are
Yes.
2 days away. Two
Right.
days away
Right.
from the stimulus check hitting, and then we are only 3 days away actually from Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Snyder
I'm
cut.
so
So
excited for that.
Oh, is
Yeah.
that
back to
really?
back.
That comes
Yeah,
out.
that's
Oh,
coming
dude,
out.
that's going to be
Mhm.
fantastic.
4
gonna be
hours
fantastic.
of a good time. I am extremely excited, and then just another few weeks, it's Kong versus Godzilla. It is actually the battle of V's mom versus King Kong. So I'm actually extremely excited to get to watch that movie.
Thank you. Yes, make
Zero
dead mother
special
jokes. There you
effects.
go. There you go. Make dead mother jokes. Go ahead.
We're live. You know, we're gonna bust out all the stops right away.
Yeah.
But no,
That's why we called it
speaking
Are
of
We Canceled this week.
yes, and that brings us to the topic. We are going to discuss a little bit about cancel culture, and I'm sure it's something you guys have actually most definitely, if you have not heard about the term "quote unquote" cancel culture, you've in fact been living under a rock, or right at the start of it, you yourself were canceled, and you've been logged off the internet ever since then. So you might have forgotten what the term endured, but no, cancel culture. It's going to be a. I'm going to let my co-host take the reign here in a second, but I am extremely excited about this topic. I think it's going to be a good one. I can speak for myself that it is literally just a matter of days, moments, hours before my name officially gets trending and is canceled officially. So I'm here just enjoying life while I can on this side with you guys. And so
Oh my
if for
gosh.
whatever reason next week something slips up or gets leaked from when I was a sixth grader and our show is not successful, I will take the blame now while I can. So it
Oh
is what
yeah.
it is. But with that said, I am gonna Andy, I'm gonna let you take the reins on this one. I know you've done some good research on
Well, if you didn't want to do the
cancel
what's
culture in the
trending,
past. And,
I don't know if you want to do
oh,
what's
wait,
trending this. Yes,
yeah, I
because I
was gonna.
do.
We can do that right now. Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Oh
start. Let's go with that.
well.
Start off on a high
Well,
note.
I will start out with this. I'm sure you guys have heard about this, and I've got it right here pulled up on my tab. It's a announcer for a Oklahoma girls high school basketball game. I don't know if you guys saw this or not,
I did.
but
I did
yeah.
see this. This is wild.
So So this was the semifinals for the Oklahoma State championship, and it was Norman High School, Norman out of Norman, Oklahoma, and one of my college roommates was from Norman, Oklahoma, and so that what happened was, so these girls took a knee at the national anthem. And so then the guy didn't realize that, he said, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cut to the national anthem. And he says when he didn't realize that the mic was still hot. He says they're kneeling and I'm just gonna F them. One of them said, I hope Norman gets their A kicked. I hope they lose. They're gonna kneel like that, and he said, hell no. And then he went on to call the players the N word. And so then this was on Thursday. Then he issues a statement due to what did he say? So he attributed it to it that his blood sugar was spiking, and so he issues an apology and he blames it on his blood sugar spiking. So to me, that is just that's remarkable right there. That takes a whole lot of class to say, hey, he said, okay, here it is. I found the quote. He says, see, during the Norman High School girls basketball game against Midwest City, I made inappropriate racist comments, believing that the microphone was off. However, let me state immediately that there's no such excuse. He goes on, he says, I'm a family man, blah, blah, blah. And he says, I will state that I suffered type 1 diabetes, and during the game, my sugar was spiking.
I mean,
excusing my reason.
I see, this literally is the best possible scenario for the next Snickers "You're Not You and You're Hungry" commercials. Like, I would love for that. Just like he's just on there, just touting some crazy racist rhetoric, and then just some guys like, "Hey, man."
Yeah. Oh, and we have our first live. We have our first live comment. Colby Coleman says, "Poor excuse." And Cassie LaFave, thanks for listening, guys, says diabetes isn't an excuse for being racist.
You get a little racist when you're hungry sometimes,
Hey, diabetes.
You're not you when you're hungry. Try a Snickers.
It's not an excuse for being racist, but that's the excuse that my grandma went with her whole life was. So, hey, whatever.
Oh my gosh, that's too much. That is too much.
I remember. I watched that. I watched that video, and for those that haven't seen it, and if you're from a small town, kind of like we were, if you had like a local sports radio that would come into high school basketball games, always posted up on the bleachers, that like, what is it? Eagle 101,
Eagle 102,
Eagle 102,
Eagle 102.
Yeah.
So Eagle 102 is for like our area. That would be like if Eagle 102, one of the announcers just thought they were cutting to the local florist commercial, but actually was hot mic still, and just called.
Oh, they would drag
the entire.
Oh
God, man, yeah, an absolute. I've watched that video. It was actually like, this is crazy. Travis, did you have what did you have? Do you have anything for this week?
No, I've been kind of out of the loop a little bit. I didn't even know that happened. I mean, I didn't even see that like any of like the news I read in the morning or nothing. Which I'm kind of surprised I didn't see anything about that.
That hit my feed. That hit my ESPN feed the day after it happened, and I was like, there's no way. There's no way that somebody was that dense that could happen.
Yeah, it was actually like crazy.
I don't know. People never cease to surprise me anymore. So it's
no. One thing, it was not trending. This happened a while back, from my understanding, but I saw it recently, and it was recently kind of coming back up in the news. A kind of a story about a Canadian guy who, for those of you who don't know, in Peru, a very big tourist activity in Peru is to do a drug called ayahuasca, which is a hallucinogenic drug that sends you on this kind of crazy trip to basically see God in the universe whenever you're taking it. And this is a really big native cultures have done this. Indigenous people have been practicing using ayahuasca for thousands of years. And in Peru, it is a super popular tourist attraction for people to come to Peru, do ayahuasca with these shamans. Now it's become such a touristy trap kind of thing where fake shamans are coming in and actually like mixing other drugs with the ayahuasca that are like taking these people on completely other different trips. And a while back, there was actually an individual from Canada, and he had actually had this trip so bad that he actually went insane while he was in Canada, or not Canada, while he was in Peru. And he actually tripped so bad that he shot and killed
Oh my God.
a it's not even just like some Peruvian shaman. He shot one of like the town elders, one of the most respected older women. I believe she was like in her 80s or 90s, like shot and killed her because his trip was so bad and was freaking out. Well, he tried to escape because this mob from this town tried to go after him, and he was able to get away for a little bit. But what was trending was what was making the rounds again on the internet was a video of him actually being caught by the townsfolk of Peru. And some of the people were like, hey, we should turn this guy into the police. And then the townspeople were like, no. And they took it upon themselves. And what was making the rounds on the internet, it was trending for a bit again, was there was a guy who just ripped out an old seat belt out of a car, tied a noose, and gave the boy the true Peruvian experience. Oh yeah. And it was it just kind of goes to show America, let's leave it at pot. Let's make pot legal, and then let's leave it there. Let's leave the ayahuasca and the seatbelt strangulation to the other nations, and we will gladly keep our marijuana and our
So the moral of the story is a bad trip will get you canceled.
It'll permanently canceled. Not like a show that's going to get reruns or picked up by a streaming service. I mean, gonzo.
Oh, that's it right there. That's it. Right there. So fantastic.
Well, that leads us in, and unless either of you two have anything, I'd say let's dive head first into the topic of the week, which is cancel culture.
All right, boys. Well, I ran this quote by the boys on what day was it? Was that Tuesday or Wednesday? I ran this quote by you guys. I can remember.
The one in the group chat.
Yeah. So this one says, and I actually took this quote straight from. So we're covering civil liberties this week on our in my government class, and we're going through the First Amendment, or your civil rights actually, and we're going through freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. We're going to be covering freedom of assembly this next week, and this was the quote in the very first section, and it just bears for everybody to hear. It says, "The American system of government depends on the ability of the people to make sound, reasoned judgments on matters of public concern. The people can best make such judgments when they know all the facts and can hear all the available interpretations of those facts." Now, this is exactly what the cancel culture is not. The issues that we have within our current culture is that we are not aware of all the facts surrounding a person or an event. We're easily offended anymore. You guys agree with that or not? But we are easily
100%
offended.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to say this with a disclaimer, and I'm waiting for the comment bar to light up on this. But there are things. I'll go out there on the limb first and say this: that there are things that need to be canceled. There are things that anything that, and I'm just going to start. Anything that's racist needs to be. I mean, that's blatantly racist, like what that guy did on the radio. That guy never needs to be on the radio ever again, ever again. Okay, but here's the thing: history is a constant. It doesn't change. People's perception of it, however, totally changes. So my question is, what then is the proper way to look at history? Do we look at it objectively or subjectively? So do we look at it as what it is, or do we subject it to our interpretation and say, okay, well, I see it this way or I see it that way? And, you know, the fact occurred. One can choose to look at it as it occurred, or they can attempt to break it down and turn it into something that it isn't. Okay. So let's go to, I've got where's my little fact list here? Some of these things that I pulled up were just remarkable. If we look at, let's say, let's go with George Washington. Okay. So good old George, George Washington was, obviously our first president. He believed in, establishing a strong country, a strong democracy. As the president, let's just put it this way, when he retired from the presidency, okay, he went home back to Virginia, and he had a slave population of 380 slaves on his plantation. Okay. Now, to give this the proper reflection, he put in his will that upon his death, that all the slaves were to be freed. Because one thing that George was afraid that the slaves would revolt against Martha and just have an uprising. And I mean, he had slaves who had fled and who had went to, I believe one had went to Philadelphia. And that was the other thing. Since our first capital was not Washington, D.C., our first capital was actually New York City, and Washington actually took up residence in Philadelphia. In the state of Pennsylvania, you could only have a slave there. If you brought a slave to Pennsylvania, you could only have it there for 6 months. Okay, so every 6 months, right before that 6-month time frame, Washington would cycle out his slaves to bring in a fresh batch for the house. And so, but people didn't talk about that. Another thing that you don't get is that, the story about what George Washington's teeth were made out of wood. They were not made out of wood. He actually had, I could not believe this. I had to look at this at a couple of different sites to verify this. He actually got teeth from his slaves that they had pulled out. And it was a thing that was, people sometimes pull, like out of corpses, where they would have their dentist shove them up in their back in their mouth. So let that one sink in just for a little bit.
Well, what's crazy is that is when I was younger, that was like a fact that George Washington had wooden teeth, and then teeth from like hippos and stuff. Even in like, I'm sure I could find my like who was George Washington book, and that is like an actual thing that's in there, and in the history books even said this. So it is crazy that was one of those real big like, oh crap, oh truth moments that like hit me when I got older. That was like, makes way more sense, but is definitely a lot darker than, oh yeah, he got him from a dead hippo at the Washington City Zoo or something.
Oh yeah, and so when you look at some of these, and George Washington was just one. If I say, okay, let's go to somebody who is more let's go to somebody who is more contemporary. Okay, so let's go with Mother Teresa. Okay, to all our Catholic viewers out there, I'm sorry, this is, but okay, so Mother Teresa, she served in India for many years, and she basically ran uh, a hospital there, and she was, of course, she was canonized by the church. She died in '92, and I think she was canonized 8 years later. And she was, you know, she. So what you don't know about this was, though, she got donations worldwide that amounted, and by some accounts, in the millions. Okay, and according to it was the bank that was in Rome that handled the account, that she had, that most of that money, she was the second largest account holder or manager of a bank account in Rome. Now you think about all the mafioso types and all those people who are in Italy and everything, and she had the second largest, bank account.
That's a
God
lot of
bless.
pasta.
And so that money, then I read the account of one of the nurses who worked there, and these people were misdiagnosed all the time. There was one guy who had been misdiagnosed with I forgot what they said it was, but it ended up being yellow fever, and the stuff that they gave Trump to help treat his COVID. What was that? Chlorinique, I think is what it was called. And
Or
so
is some
Diet Coke,
name like
Diet
that.
Coke.
Diet Coke, hit the Diet Coke button. No, but and so they gave this guy Chlorinique, and he recovered, but that was after a medical professional had stepped in. Okay, and so and there are, we have a lot of other. I I could go, just some of the other ones that you could say, Thomas Jefferson. We could talk about Thomas Jefferson and the fact that he had, affair with one of his slaves. Or I'm trying to find my list right now that I have. I had there was here it is. All right. So, Mahatma Gandhi. Now, this is Mahatma Gandhi, activist who preached love and peace. Gandhi spearheaded the Indian independence from Britain. Through his letters and words, some scholars and he was the good in the world. Gandhi didn't practice what he preached, especially regarding chastity. When he told married couples to take a cold bath when they felt sexual urges, the man carried on an affair with his own doctor. Okay, for a number of years. Okay, I'll get to Winston Churchill in a second.
Could you imagine if you had to carry around an ice bath with you every time you had sexual urges? I wouldn't have gotten out of one from like 12 to all of 5 minutes ago.
God. Oh my God.
No.
Thank you. Hey, live audience, how you liking our show right now?
I couldn't get that out of my head.
Let's see. Where was my other one? Oh, Elvis Presley. The king of rock and roll, made women of all ages swoon in 1950s and 1960s. But the king had a predilection for, how should we say this, teenage girls. Elvis couldn't help falling in love with his 14-year-old Priscilla Belew, his future wife. Elvis was 24, she was 14. And we don't ever talk about that. I could, let's see what else. Henry Ford, very anti-Semitic. He owned a newspaper called the Dearborn Independent. He used it as a platform for his views on Semitism. He along with Hitler said that Jews were the ones who started World War I. Okay. And you could go on and on and on. And then I want to move to this whole thing with the cancel culture. Okay. So then we get into what the culture says about, people who are right like now. Sean texted yesterday in our group chat about the attempt to cancel Winston Churchill. Now, as a historian, Winston Churchill is one of my favorite guys. Okay, this guy was the one who rallied. By the way, before I even get started, he had the highest approval rating of any British prime minister in history. 90% approval rating. Okay. And so now you have this whole thing, and this was last week. They covered up the statue of Winston Churchill that's out in front of Parliament, and somebody had spray painted on his statue. It said Winston Churchill, and it said was a ploy or something like that. And so they had this. So what the whole thing was about was where was it at? It says there, that one time before he became prime minister, that Winston Churchill had approached the question of superiority of nations and peoples from a color angle. So these people claim that to him the question was about people, nationalities, ideology, power blocks, whatever, that the white race was superior. But there was never any real proof of that it ever occurred, and that he had moved on from that. That he had went and he had pushed for his, and from it, and he is on record from his first encounter with South Africa in 1899, which had apartheid government up until 1993, when Nelson Mandela became president. And even in 1899, Churchill stood up for native rights of the people of South Africa, not the Dutch Boers that were there, but see, so people don't know about that, about Winston Churchill. Okay, I'll do one more, and then this is the one that kills me. Aunt Jemima. Okay, Aunt Jemima was actually named Nancy Green. Nancy Green was born into slavery in Montgomery County, Kentucky. And what year was that? 1836. Okay. She pioneered the famous mix. And by the way, you can go to this. I got my information from abcnews.com. And when she moved with the family that she was slave to, she moved with the family to Chicago. And she became a strong voice at the Olivet Baptist Church, the city's oldest black congregation. The church was noted for its work to shield those who had escaped slavery who arrived in Chicago. There were many slave catchers in Chicago still, and she was one of the people who was active in calling out for the freedom of slaves. But yet they want to take her because, that is not her. And just for the record, that is not her face that is on Aunt Jemima. And so, in the face that was originally on Aunt Jemima was from a black face. Now, it's not the one that's on there now, but was from a blackface Jim Crow play back in, the vaudeville days. And since then, it's been modernized and made to look more politically correct and everything. And, I mean, it's ridiculous how people move on and on about this stuff. Okay. The fact remains, people are flawed characters, even our most beloved ones. Okay. This current cancel culture seeks to remove anything that even in the least bit seems to offend anyone at any time. I got this, and this is a great quote from Vox. You can go to vox.com. It says, within the turbulent past several years, the idea that a person can be canceled, in other words, culturally blocked from having a prominent public platform or career, has become a polarizing topic of debate. The rise of cancel culture and the idea of canceling someone coincides with a familiar pattern. A celebrity or other public figure does or says something offensive. A public backlash, often fueled by politically progressive social media, ensues. Then comes the call to cancel the person. That is, to effectively end their career or revoke their cultural cachet, whether through boycotts of their work or disciplinary action from an employer. So, I'm getting feedback somewhere, fellas. I don't know where it's at, but that's okay, I guess. But it's the last part that I brought was out of the New York Times.
regarding the
this is what
cancel
it
culture
says.
like definition.
Yes, yeah. It said, left unanswered is what explains the urgent need to call, not just call out, but condemn the resurgence of ancient beliefs in scapegoating and human sacrifice, the shift in American society from guilt to shame, the evolution of a digital, I love this quote, a digital form of carnival and misrule as a safety valve to let out all our pin-up rage, and why even as pundits decry cancel culture as a mob running amok, the powers that be somehow remain in place unchanged. Okay. So my last and then I'll open this back up to you guys. Where will we draw the line? I believe that we are on a slippery slope right now. That I believe that it's going to get to a point where we are going to, okay, we're going to cancel Thomas Jefferson. We're going to cancel George Washington. Well, those guys wrote the Constitution. Let's cancel that. Okay, there has to be a dividing line somewhere. There has to be a line drawn in the sand and say, this is it. This is it. We can't. We've got to. I mean, because is this is ignorant people who are only seeing one side. Now,
Oh, I'm not sure what it's.
Yeah, I can't hear him talking at all anymore.
Doing it looks like a little bit of a technical.
I'm sorry, guys.
Folks.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm sorry,
all good. Perfect. All good.
I'm sorry about that. I got butted out there. But who was the guy on Family Guy who was the giggity? Who was that?
Quagmire.
Quagmire. So now we see all these episodes of, all of this of Quagmire. Okay. And where's the line? I mean, you can't have one and not have the other. So that's all I got.
No, I want to go off of this. I want to really reference the video I was telling you guys about. It happened back right before the inauguration when they were trying to impeach former President Trump, and Republican Jim Jordan out of Ohio, he's a representative, was talking to the House of Representatives. And when you get through his whole Trump defense, he makes a really good point. And he's quoted as saying, there's a fine line here, and cancel culture will come for us all. And he makes a really good point. I mean, he's saying this is going to be beyond Republican versus Democrat. Like, this ideology is eventually going to grow into something that everything's going to get canceled. You brought up a good point. Where is the line? Like, do I think that racism needs to be canceled? Absolutely. Like, if you are racist, you are a horrible person, and you should not be able to go on live streams and go on these ignorant rants and say things like that. I think that is something that absolutely deserves to be canceled. But there's some things that happen that, it's questionable. Like, because canceling is such a powerful thing, like, do I lose my livelihood because I disagree with you on something? I think that's what we're starting to see, is a disagreement in opinion leading to a cancellation now versus something extreme. Like, we're really toying the line here, I believe.
Yeah, and that's where it's becoming muddy water,
line, I guess,
because there's a difference. If you don't like something that someone says, and you choose not to either watch movies that person is in, you choose not to, like, as far as like the celebrity kind of side of things goes, if there's an athlete you don't like, you don't have to watch that individual. You don't have to.
No.
Now,
Yes.
where it gets
Right.
muddy
Right.
is when publicly traded companies are now firing individuals over their political beliefs. And that's something that we are seeing happening. And again, where it gets muddy as far as the water goes kind of just depends on what we've started to see. I know, like I said, Gina Carano was a star of The Mandalorian, and I couldn't tell you his name, but there is a guitarist for the band Mumford and Sons, which is not a band I've really ever listened to.
Yeah. I
But
forgot about him.
those two individuals, one has stepped away from his position as a guitar player, and Gina had been fired from Disney because of political remarks they shared. One of them, the guy from Mumford and Sons, shared a book that he had read that said, literally, the tweet said, "This is a good read. You should check it out." Didn't like say even what side of the spectrum he was on. Just literally said, "This is a good read. You should check it out." And then was number 3 trending on Twitter as far as to cancel him. The next day, the band said that he'll be taking a leave from the band for an extended, period of time, an indefinite amount. And then Gina Carano had an Instagram story that basically compared and contrasted the treatment, the beginnings of internment camps of how Jews were treated in their communities, to how individuals are being treated here in America now with their voice. So it's one of those simpler soaps where it's you have to understand your audience. If I'm Gina Carano, and I'm probably butchering her last name, but if I know my audience, my target audience is people who watch Disney products, Star Wars products, Disney, I have got to know that there's probably a very good chance that the audience that I directly engage with is probably not going to be too happy that I'm sharing specific things that are comparing, contrasting how the liberal individuals in America treat Republicans who are open and about being Republican on the internet is basically the gist of it, where she now has lost her job. But that creates an interesting point because now she's hired on to star in another film that is going to be backed by a large conservative organization. We're getting to this point in time in the United States where even entertainment has to be left or it has to be right, and there's no way to splice it. But that makes things interesting because take a look at Disney now. I would say Disney's one of those companies you would think is pretty diverse. Let's even just let's talk about of all the new, even Pixar has gotten more diverse with the characters that they're bringing to life, right?
Yeah.
Well, it gets interesting. Let's go to Star Wars, for example. This was a big deal where one of the main characters of Star Wars was an African American male, right? As far as you had people on the internet bickering and complaining on one side because they screamed that Disney was pushing diversity because they had a woman and a black guy as their two main characters. So you made one side of people mad. Then you had other people happy that that was the case, that we were seeing diversity. Great. But then when Disney was promoting this movie in China, they took the African American actor off of the poster.
Did they? I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
Not completely, but he went from one of the main faces to about a quarter size just off in the corner.
Oh my gosh.
Very, very interesting way to promote diversity. But it's
highly suspect.
We get into this real weird muddy water of unfortunately can't make everyone happy. But at the same time, no one's yet called for the cancelization of those executives that made that decision. Because those executives, no one has to say who made that decision. So they're free in the clear of no one needing to worry about that. We're in such a weird space and time where I myself, as someone that is actively, has pursued stand-up comedy and has told jokes, I tell jokes on here. Comedians are a weird one where is it yesterday, the day before, Bill Burr was at the Grammys and made a joke while he was presenting a Grammy Award, made a joke. Not 30 minutes later was number one trending right behind the Grammys about his joke and how
do you think so? Do you think that social media is the root of all of this? I mean, is this the root? I mean, has this become such a big thing? Because I don't remember this growing up. I mean, I don't even think, do you guys remember this growing up when you were kids, that you knew about this, that you knew the term cancel culture? Did you guys know that?
No. And I 100% believe it's the rise of social media. And yeah, I mean, that's how everybody communicates now. And
I would say the first major case of cancel culture probably came in like 2015 is where we first really saw it.
What was that with?
Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah. Okay.
That was kind of like a landmark.
But even then, like, people weren't saying he was canceled. It was people were outright talking about how they were openly boycotting the NFL because this guy plays in the NFL and people are kneeling. And that was like the first trend was people wanting to stop watching football because people were kneeling for the national anthem. That was the first wave of like real initiative to quote unquote cancel someone and get someone blackballed from a football team and the NFL in general. So I would say that was like the first real major case, but even then it wasn't like he was canceled. But then that's the term that, started to come from that.
Yeah. It's like the big one I think of for like trying to look back. Or what year was, there's another one. What year was Sandy Hook? What year was that?
That was 2016, I believe.
Okay, so this is a little bit afterwards because I remember like
no, that had to have was it
earlier than that?
That was,
I think it was earlier.
I think that was 13 or 12.
Yeah,
so I remember that happening, and then what was it like? Alex Jones came out and said like, "Oh, it was this big conspiracy," and then obviously what he said was completely false and just ignorant, and he got bashed for it. And that's a perfect example of things that rightfully so should be canceled. Like there was no, and he even admits to the mistake now. But that's another one. If we're looking back, I can think of like kind of the beginning of.
But I just want to go back to this just for a second. There has to be, obviously, this is why we're doing this podcast. Again, so Travis, you brought this up last week. You said, here's our voice of reason point right here. Okay. Here's our voice of reason point when we say there has to be a voice of reason that says, look, there's parts of history that are nasty, that are dirty, that have ugliness to them. I mean, to say, and there's a cancel culture going in the other direction too. The last president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, I always butcher his name, but this guy went on an interview. This was back in 2000. Oh heck, it's been a while, but this guy actually goes on 60 Minutes and he claims that the Holocaust never happened, that it's a farce. Okay, so this is cancel culture on the other end of the spectrum, just to pretend that it didn't happen. Okay, and we know that it happened because you have the accounts of Eisenhower. We have millions of pictures that showed the Holocaust. Okay, so history is nasty. You can't just ignore that it didn't happen. You can't make it. We want to make history fit in this nice little box that it's going to be pretty and it's going to look right and it's going to sound right and it's going to feel right and we're going to do all of this thing. just to make sure that we feel good about ourselves and that we don't offend anybody. Yes, there are things that need to be canceled. You know, there are ugly things that need to be canceled. There, that, yes, there are police officers do need to be taught how to have, to deal with certain groups better. Yes, there are, you know, there are you know what? And here's the other thing. And I know this may offend people, but I'm going to come out on my own. This is my Christian viewpoint coming out. If we're going to cancel Pepe Le Pew, let's cancel pornography then. I mean, seriously, I know that could be. I mean, some people look at that as their own form of entertainment, but I'm going to come right out and say it. If we're going to cancel stuff like that, I mean, cancel that, because that's the stuff that that branches into so many different areas. And if we're going to cancel something, then cancel all of it. You can't have just this nice little piece. We can't talk about what people do back in the dark rooms or on their browser history or whatever. But when it comes to something, oh, we can target that, and that to me totally hacks me off. I hate it. I don't like it.
No, 100%. And I mean, if it's too much of canceling to fit certain agendas, like you said, like if we're going to cancel this, then we might as well just cancel all of it. Well, no, it's only that fits the agenda, so we got to cancel only that. That's okay. It's just cancel that one thing.
I completely agree with the idea of canceling like step sibling porn, but I don't think we should get rid of stepmom porn just yet.
Oh my God.
I think that if we're going to cancel anything, it should be the Sis Loves Me channel, and then go from there.
Hi, Facebook Live. How you doing tonight, Facebook? Hi, Facebook Live.
I want to go back something really quick.
Yeah. Please,
if I may. You made a good point about like, humans, the world. People don't realize just how messed up this world really is. Most people have never been to a third world country, and I could tell you just from experience, we don't know how good we have it. Like, you see some of the things that are bad here, and I'm not downplaying. I mean, there's some injustices and things that do happen here, but there's some truly evil things that happen in the world. I mean, truly evil and disgusting. And, I'll just give this example, and maybe this is a whole nother topic, but you have the right to go protest something you don't believe in here. You go do that in a country like Venezuela, guess what happens? You get AKs bursting at you. They go on mass shootings and kill people. So it's to go back to like the cancel culture of it. It's just there is a line, and you have to understand what needs to be canceled. And all right, maybe this is a little ridiculous. Maybe use common sense when you're interpreting things. Don't be extremist.
Yeah, we have to, just like everything else, there has to be common sense applied in this realm. I mean, I've always been, and back when I first started teaching, it was called revisionist history back in the day. Let's make history fit in, like I said, fit in our box. Let's make history go the way we want it to go. And when that happens, what you end up seeing is things get left out. Things don't get said. You don't know the whole story. And I mean, that goes back to my original quote. I think freedom of speech works when you know all sides of the story. If you don't know all sides of the story, you might as well not even try to study. I mean,
Yes.
that's been my whole philosophy of studying history and teaching history has been, you need to know everything. And this goes back to what we said last week when we were talking about influencers. You got to do your homework. You can't, and I mean, these people come out and they want to cancel stuff. I'm like, do you really know the whole story? Do you know the whole story? And my history teacher always told, so my history teacher in high school said, there are three sides to every story. There's my side, there's your side, and then there's what actually happened. And they just want to see their side. They don't want to see the other side. They want to just see their side.
No, there's a lot of truth to that. And that divide, that mindset, that's one of the reasons we are where we are today. Going back to if we're going to go back to politics, I mean, just look at this idea. Like, there's an agenda pushed now where, like, and I'm not a Republican, but mostly on the internet, you'll see all these articles about how Republicans are just these crazy far right, racist, absurd people, and and vice versa. You'll look. There's people that think, "Oh, you're a Democrat. You're just a far left liberal with no common sense." There is no middle. It is just far left and far right, and I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I mean, I don't think the majority of people are really that way.
And what the person that you would arguably consider that might have been in the middle of the political spectrum, what got less than 2% of the vote in every single state, the Libertarian Party, give or take something like that this past election.
Yeah.
So which is wild, because like we know lots of people. We know lots of people from different backgrounds. Travis and I know individuals from all over the United States and all over the world that we've met in our military experience. You've had the joy of getting to know literally thousands of different individuals that have walked in your classroom, even more, and in your private life and going into church and all that stuff. We've met people from all over the face of the planet Earth. And what's crazy is I can probably say, at least from what I have seen and what I've experienced, again, my experience is different than everyone else's. But what's so crazy to me is that the real right-wing kind of nuts that it seems like, when you hear Republican, that's what, you see thrown up on the internet as some guy with a bison headdress on storming the Capitol. And then when you think Democrat, you instantly, like, my brain goes to thinking some goth 19-year-old chick that hates everyone and is wearing clothes
Or
she
that
bought
meme with that chick with the glasses that's like yelling at somebody.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
exactly right. Yeah. But how many and actually knowing those people are few and far between. So many more people are just kind of in the middle. That's the crazy thing is,
well, not on the internet.
What people seem to forget is, and again, it's tough, but that's what's so beautiful about this country. That's what I love. When I've gone on rants to, my girlfriend about it. What I love about this country is you have a right to choose what you feel like you want to believe. You have a right to go out and vote for who you want to vote for. We even saw that thousands upon thousands of people wanted to write in Kanye West because they thought that it was funny. And as some people might disagree with writing in Kanye West, at least you have the fundamental right to do so. What's so beautiful about when people vote, there are some individuals that are one topic voters. They choose one topic, they choose one subject, and they go with whoever they think is on that side, right? Let's say if it was like something like abortion, right? They want abortion to be legal. They're going to jump on that train. And some people might disagree, but it's their right. It's the right that they have. And that's something that we are blessed with that other nations don't have the luxury of also having.
And we need to honor that. I mean,
yes.
Instead of bashing each other and criticizing, I'm like, oh, that Trump supporter, oh, that Biden supporter. Hey, they're just an American that are exercising their right to an opinion and voting for somebody who they believe is who's going to be the best leader for the country.
And unfortunately, what happens is a lot of times these individuals run into each other, and for whatever reason, it seems that their political beliefs might be the start of the conversation, and that is going to ruin a potential bonding experience where maybe those two individuals could just talk about how much they love hazy IPAs. Maybe they could talk about how much they
it's
both
good stuff.
love or hate the Kansas City Chiefs.
Easy. There we go.
It's crazy how we've gotten to a point where, and again, if you disagree, cool. I just think it's wild that people's political beliefs are now dictating how they treat, how they interact, how they even meet new people. I mean, what I was going to say a little bit earlier was what we're kind of seeing trending is people are so divided. It's literally becoming society is giving you have one or two options. You can be on this side or be on that side. And we're seeing it in social media sites, right? Like, for example, we talked about Parler a little bit the other day, how some people were so upset that they weren't allowed to speak that they created an entirely different social media platform. And now there's film companies that are, red pilled, that are starting to produce movies that specifically preach what might be considered extremely conservative, right wing, hardcore red pilled ideology.
I just watched one recently. It was interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm a firm believer in accountability.
So you can't. What kills me though, and I agree totally with what you're saying, Sean. But I mean, have people totally lost the point of? I want to go back to something you said earlier about just a joke. Um, the guy from, and I'm a huge fan. This shows how much of a nerd I am. I'm a huge fan of Monty Python's Flying Circus, and I cannot. John Cleese. So John Cleese did this thing, and it was on Facebook. It was a couple years ago, and it was an interview that he did with the BBC, and that people have lost the idea of how to take a joke. It's a joke, right? I mean, it's a joke. You can't say something like you were talking about. The other, what did you say on the Grammys or whatever it was the other night? You can. It's a joke. Take it. Oh my God! Can you believe they said that? One of my favorite things that I love to do that I watch in my free time on YouTube are all the old roast from Dean Martin roast from like the 60s and 70s. And we've talked about this before. My absolute favorite comic of all times is Don Rickles. And I mean, I love him because of his social commentary, because of how he called things. You know, Don Rickles is dead now. He's been dead for 3 years. But I mean, he called, he said, and his whole thing was, I laugh at life. I laugh at bigotry. I make jokes about bigotry to show how ignorant it really is. And why don't we just can't? Oh, we're going to can't. I'm waiting for the day where YouTube will pull every Don Rickles, every Dean Martin roast off of YouTube because it's socially unacceptable. It's like you were talking about Disney Plus earlier too. How Disney Plus, if you guys haven't seen this, so if you watch, you can go back and watch all the old Muppet shows on Disney Plus now, and there's some of them that actually have a warning at the beginning. This broadcast may contain socially improper jokes or something, blah blah blah, like that. And I'm like, seriously, this is the point that we're at now, where we're saying you might be offended if you watch this. Here's a hot tip: don't watch it. Yeah. Don't watch it. Don't listen to the joke. Turn the channel. Turn it off if you don't like it. Jeez.
I think the whole cancel culture thing, just from a broad spectrum, picture it like this. People condemning things that are perceived as bad, they feel good about it. Like, say, like someone says a joke that was a little risky, but it's a joke, but people's first response is to condemn it. They feel good about it because they feel like I'm condemning something that's bad. And I think that has gone into a really extreme, people have taken that to the extreme, and we're condemning all these things now because in my opinion, I think people get a feel good response from it. I mean, just look at the masks thing. I mean, people yelling at each other, put your mask on. Well, they feel like, they feel good because they told that person to put their mask on. I mean, different subject, but I think the ideology is kind of the same.
Right.
And I don't know. It's, again, we go back to the question, at what point? where's the line? Like where does this end? Does this end? And does it end good? I
Well,
don't think it does.
that kind of reminds me a little bit of something that Bill Burr had said on a talk show that he was on a while back. This was not new, but it was Bill Maher that was asking him, how do you feel about being canceled and people saying that they should cancel you and all this stuff. And what was funny is he said this thing that stuck with me because it's so true. Where he's saying, Bill replied with, "Look, what we do is we tell jokes, right? That this is not meant to be taken seriously in any form. It's a joke." And he said, "What's crazy is that the news and news outlets and people that want to share these will just share like a little snippet of what was said." But he's like, "But what you always hear right after it's said is laughter, because it was a good joke or it was a joke." So it did its job. It did what it was supposed to do. It was told to be shocking. It was told to be funny. It wasn't meant to be taken any more serious than I'm going to say something. The whole goal of going on stage to tell a joke is to get people to laugh. I've never gone on stage and gone, I am going to go on here and change this person's political opinion. I'm going to go up there and change how they feel about a certain subject. No, you literally go up there so that you can get laughs out of them. And I know comedy is different from like the rest of the world because there's a difference, right? Like naturally, a stand-up comedian shouldn't be saying the same things, or the president of the United States shouldn't be saying the same things that a stand-up comedian is saying whenever he's going and giving State of the Union addresses. There's a substantial difference between the two things. But I do think that again this touches a little bit on the subject we talked about last week. Is you know who cares what a celebrity might say or something? Like, do they need to be role models? Who really cares? Maybe if you're a video game streamer that has 20 million views or 20 million viewers per stream, and 19 million of those viewers are 13 or younger, maybe you should be more accountable with what you're saying whenever you're streaming and whenever you're talking. But let's say if, you know, people complain about lyrics and rap songs and stuff like that, but hey man, if you're a kid from the O Block in Chicago and that's you rap about what you've known your whole life, which is gang banging, drugs, and breaking the law, and that's what you're
NWA.
rapping about.
NWA.
Why should you have to change up what you're rapping about? You're not a role model. And then if again, it was one of those things. Like there's a rapper recently who made a rap line and that used an individual's name as a play on words, and then people
I
tried
heard
coming
about
after him
this.
to get him canceled. And it was like,
Yeah.
no, it's not like that. I was literally just using a name to get a play on words, not calling that person a name. I just used their name to get a play on words. That was the whole point of it. But nope, people went for his head. Fans of that person went for his head, and it's just like it's a never ending cycle. I don't know.
There you go. That's, I mean, we, and just as a disclaimer for this too, we had, in our meeting last week, we had talked about this in our meeting last week. Do we bring in, when we talked about influencers, do we bring in cancel culture? And Sean, you did a great job by saying, nope, that's too much. Let's do one at a time. And so
1 hour later. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I definitely think it's something that we're gonna see for a long time, and I don't even know if we're at the peak yet of true, because there,
And
like I
that's what's
said,
scary.
and what we've talked about before is there is a substantial difference in levels of what cancel culture is. I've heard people try to compare or say like things like the Me Too movement were the same thing as cancel culture, and that's just not true. That's
No.
holding individuals accountable for their actions. And there is a difference where if someone has slipped up and let's say made a mistake 10 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever it might be, it's not necessarily wrong to hold that person accountable. so long as we understand, hey, well, before I dive into those murky waters, let me put it this way. Some things that people say, obviously, as we get older, our views change, right? We grow, we learn, we adapt. Some people don't, right? And for some people, it is the getting canceled or the cancel culture shock that is what makes them realize the error of their ways, for better or worse. Now, where it gets muddy is I am not an individual, unless it is something directed towards me specifically. I'm not the one that can offer forgiveness. But remember, with as many people as we have in the world, not everyone might forgive that person. There's nothing wrong with the accountability of your actions. It's just, should someone lose their right to direct a movie because when they started a Twitter 10 years prior, they told some jokes on there that they told when they were a budding comedian on a stage that had less than 10 people watching them.
Right.
That's something that actually happened.
We just need to use common sense, I think, and
exactly.
Really sit down and think about it. Like, okay, does this person need to lose their entire livelihood because of this, whatever the instance is? Like, really think about it and use some common sense.
I completely agree.
I think we got it, fellas.
Yeah, as we kind of wrap this part of the podcast up, and I know we're kind of shuffling towards the end here. V, was there anything in particular that you hadn't talked about yet, as far as this kind of time in history? Was there any other specific events you wanted to hit on?
That was. I kind of wrapped it all into one. Sure. There. I think that it was, that was the main point that I wanted to bring out. So, guys, I mean, listen to reason, do your homework, use common sense.
Travis, did you have anything that folks should watch for this week at all? Anything that you've kind of been seeing, ticking, trending?
Yeah, I got something really quick, and we don't have to really get into this. I think this is a whole episode in itself regarding the Second Amendment, but we got two bills going through the House of Representatives that just passed, basically going more regulation on background checks, something a lot of people have been calling for. You can look it up. I'm not going to get into it too deep. You go on congress.gov and literally look up this bill. They're not very large. They're pretty easy reads, but something I think we're going to discuss here in the future, especially with this current administration. And I just read an article today, where's it at? Democrats push assault weapon ban and new gun control bill. And we see two bills here for more background checks and more stricter gun control. And I think that's something maybe we don't touch on a day, but if you're a gun owner, these are things to pay attention to. Even these small things like increased background checks, look into them. I mean, there's some new regulations that are coming through. And yeah, I think Second Amendment is going to be something we touch on here soon.
And that might be something that we can, that's another thing. Come on, guys, you can give comments. We've only gotten 2 comments tonight. I was kind of I thought we'd get more, but anyway, we have had up to 10 viewers, so I'm happy with that. But yeah, I think that is something. I mean, we'll probably talk about it after we get done here, but I think that is definitely, because there's a lot of definitely historical input I can put into that too. So,
but just for reference, people, this is HR 8 and HR 1446. Again, congress.gov. You can find this bill. They're very short, easy reads. Again, if you're a gun owner, I encourage you to check it out and just stay aware.
Awesome. Yeah. And as far as kind of interesting topics or anything this week, I'm kind of working on one for next week that I am super excited about. And it's going to be more of an open discussion one, just because I'm going to present some information to you guys, and I just want to hear your thoughts. I'm going to talk a little bit about an individual in Japan who was regarded as one of the most recent modern day serial killers. And what's so interesting about this individual is that he only murdered people who wanted to commit suicide. So it's kind of one of those,
Whoa.
is he really a serial killer,
Whoa.
or is he
That's
just
heavy.
the world's best world's best at euthanizing individuals? So
Jack
It'll be,
Kevorkian 2.0.
yeah, it was actually a very interesting bit of research that I had done when I had kind of heard about him. Also, next week, I know we'll definitely just have to get into it. We might be a little bit late, so we'll try to get our picks up. But now we are entering March Madness, and this is going to actually be one of the craziest brackets. And mind you, I because of everything that's gone on in the world, I can say sports has just been crazy. College basketball has been even more so crazy. And this bracket is one of the weirdest ones I've ever seen.
So they're doing everything in Indianapolis too, correct?
Yes, and they were talking a little bit on a radio show that I listened to. It sounds like they're just going to be kind of like rotating teams in this weird way within hotels of like when they're kind of spaced out, and then as teams get eliminated, they're just going to be moving teams closer to one another, so they have to see each other in hotels and stuff like that. It actually seemed pretty interesting, but yeah, it's definitely going to be a wild one. And I know we're not a sports podcast by any means, but I definitely think that'd be something to get people engaged with as well. So
all I got to say about that is, baby, Illini is the #1 seed. How about let's go Illinois?
Hey, Travis has, what is it, Loyola Chicago's in there again.
Yeah.
Is Grandma still alive? Does anyone know if
that nun? Yes, she's still alive. Yes.
Hey, so this might be the year if COVID.
I live here. I don't support the sports teams.
Hey, that's a good. That's good.
Oh man,
that's good. Keep away from the Bears, Cubs. The White Sox are actually the only team you should cheer for out in that way.
Yep.
Well, as we kind of wrap this up, guys, I wanted to thank you all so much for giving us a listen, those that listen live, and then the rest of you guys that are actually going to be listening throughout the remainder of the week on Spotify.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, guys.
Yes, there was a little bit of craziness with this one. Like I said, we've been doing this for a month now, which is crazy. It has flown by. And we will definitely work out those kinks as we get more technologically advanced and we get more things in place. It's always going to be a work in progress. But again, can't thank you guys enough for continuing to listen to us. Please, if you haven't already, check us out on Facebook at the Voice of Reason Podcast 2021. We're on YouTube, Spotify. Gentlemen, is there anything else you guys would like to add before we wrap things up here tonight?
Thanks for our online participation tonight. We've maintained between 7 and 10 viewers all night on this, so thank you guys for sticking with us, and we'll keep on making it better.
Yeah, no, this is pretty cool getting to see the live feed and kind of see people's interactions. That's pretty cool. So hope to see more of that, and hope everybody has a kick-ass week.
Yep,
absolutely. Well, make sure to drink your milk, wipe your ass, and get to class, folks. We will see you all next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Voice of Reason podcast.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Run it.